We have very high needs, high touch clients, and we provide a very high need, high touch service. We're not for everyone and everyone's not for us. I had a lawyer say to me, like, you're just so hand-holdy with clients. And I was like, you mean provide support? Is that what you mean? The litigants are fed up. The lawyers are fed up. The judges are fed up. We need a different approach. I brought a therapist into the office when she was talking about trauma-informed care in her field. It clicked. And I was like, why aren't we doing this in the legal field? I'm not somebody who's afraid of change. I'm not going to just keep doing the thing that's not working. To go through your divorce process is all done outside the courtroom in private, and it is just a much more dignified way to end your marriage, but keep your family intact. The key thing I try to help my clients understand is you can't parent the other parent. A core value to me was wanting to leave people better than I found them. Lots of clients are coming from an emotional perspective, and lots of lawyers don't want the emotions in the room, and we welcome them.
You're listening to the She Lift Project podcast, a show dedicated to helping women achieve higher levels of success in the workplace. No matter where you are in your career, we want to help you grow. Now here's your host, Cynthia Kirkpatrick, a CPA, CFP, and Senior Financial Advisor at Moneta Group.
Welcome to another episode of the She Lift Project podcast. I'm Cynthia Kirkpatrick. Thanks for joining us. Funny enough, we have our first second-time return guest here with us, Sara Marler, founder, managing partner of Marler Law Partners. Thanks for coming back.
Of course, no problem.
And before we dive in, just a joke, we had recorded an amazing episode, and there were some technical challenges with some of the equipment, and we're back. So it must have been meant to be.
It was meant to be.
So your law firm, family law, and all sorts of relations with that. But what I love about it is there's a trauma-informed piece to it, which whether you're going through a challenging time and you need attorneys, family can bring trauma no matter what. And you know, for those of us who, and I'm sure being an attorney, I'm not one, but those of us who are used to being in business, there's always the business side. But there's almost always the emotional, mental family side or extras that go along with it. So to be so innovative to bring that together, I think is just so inspiring.
So thank you. And I don't get to take all the credit for it. I think that, for me, it all started many, many years ago when I was in the prosecuting attorney's office and walked into a therapist's office myself for the first time. So it's very personal for me when I had just found this therapist out of an insurance, like back in the day when you flipped through the book and you tried to find somebody to go to, right? Randomly found this woman and went and met with her, and I was out of law school a few years and sort of was just like struggling with like how to tell how I was doing anymore, right? I didn't have grades to tell me like, am I doing well or not? I had no like measuring stick anymore. And certainly I didn't have enough trials like I thought I would, so I didn't have that measuring stick either. So I was sort of feeling like a mess and went in and saw her, and all of a sudden before I know it, she's talking about trauma, and I'm like, I don't have trauma, right? Nothing horrible has happened to me. And she starts talking about big T and little t trauma, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Fast forward however many years it's been since 2006, so I guess, yeah, good God, that many
20 years.
I know. Ugh. Anyway, I've been in therapy ever since and working on myself ever since. And have just learned and grown along the way and realized, like, as I was learning and growing about myself, that I started bringing that knowledge sort of into my work and into my clients. And as I was doing that, I realized, like, these things kind of go together. But before that, I actually had a little bit of a personal crisis and was sort of like, do I really want to be a lawyer, or do I really want to maybe go back to school and become like a psychologist or a therapist? And the therapists that were around me and psychologists that were around me professionally that I would work with and consult with on cases were saying, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. Don't do that. And so I think, over time, it just sort of clicked to bring the two together.
What was that crisis that you had?
I just was frustrated with how the system was working. I was frustrated with how clients were just getting not practical advice, how lawyers, all of us, me included, were not helping people move through these cases in a way that was, practically helpful to them, right? It just felt like we were turning up the heat rather than giving them like realistic advice on how to like move through this situation and then move on with their lives. And whatever we were doing in the litigation aspect was making everything worse for the future. And for the most part, a lot of these people, like, they have to go on and co-parent. They have to go on and continue to see one another. And ultimately, like, who this is really impacting is their children. And I got to a point where I really just, what felt like a core value to me was wanting to leave people better than I found them. And really wanting to make sure that if there was a way that I could plant some nugget of something, some kernel, some seed, something in these folks that I have influence over for this short period of time that would help them decrease the trauma for their children as they go through this process, then that was what this was really about for me. And so, yeah, it was kind of a lot of that all at the same time. And then I would say around that time, I brought a therapist into the office and had her talk to my staff about trauma, because they kept hearing me talk about it, but I felt like I wasn't explaining it well because, I'm not really qualified to do that. And it was actually during that session when she was talking about trauma-informed care in her field that it clicked. And I was like, why aren't we doing this in the legal field?
When you mentioned like big T, little t, what are those things?
So the way it was explained to me 20 years ago is you can have big T traumas, like big, horrible, catastrophic events that can happen to you, right? So, men who are in war, women who are in war, people who see horrific accidents, major injuries. Or you can have lots of little tiny things happen to you over time. Maybe you grew up in a household where there was constant fighting. Maybe you grew up in a household where there wasn't enough food. And then on top of that, there was constant fighting. Maybe you were just finding yourself in these constant little moments of crisis. And on top of that, it just builds. And these little T traumas just build and build and build to the point that it becomes a big T trauma. And then your body doesn't really know the difference, right?
Yeah. As I've gotten older, working on myself and unpacking a lot, realize that, the things that you experience, you're like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Oh, well, at least I had food on the table, or at least I had a place to live. Like, it's definitely not as bad as what some people experience. There are still things, like you said, could be arguing all the time, could be that you normalize and probably build this shell and this wall to keep the bad out, protect yourself. At the same time, you're not letting yourself out and you're not letting the good in. So there can be trauma there too.
Right. Absolutely. And then, we talk about, when my on-staff therapist and I go and do a training, or even when trainings come to us, which we do a lot of training in the office, we talk about ACEs, which is sort of this little test you can take online that gives you your ACE score. And it's a study that Kaiser Permanente did a long time ago to try to figure out, for health insurance, why are people having all these medical issues, right? And things that they looked at were like, and they've adjusted over the years, but were people like under physical abuse as a child? Did you end up having a divorce? Was there a divorce when you were growing up? Did you have a parent in jail? Did you have all these things add up your ACE score, right? And the higher your ACE score, the more likely you are to have then health effects later, including like autoimmune disease, heart conditions, things of that nature. So it does impact your body.
I hadn't heard of that, and it makes a heck of a lot of sense. Of course, insurance is going to start through that. I remember talking in our first episode, talking before about how you have a therapist as part of your services and the firm. Not having been through a divorce and not being in that realm, I didn't understand the significance and the importance of having that as part of your law firm and how that protects the client.
Yeah, she's there for a few reasons. So, she's there it protects the client, like you said. So she is our on-staff trauma therapist. Her role is client specialist. So she's not providing one-on-one therapy per se. But that is her background. Her background is a trauma therapist. But what's really great is she does protect things in the sense that when clients speak to her, things are privileged. And so they are able to share with her things that they may be afraid to share with their regular therapist because that's not protected by attorney-client privilege, right? And she is able to provide them with some level of support. She also is there in order to work with them in other supportive ways. She can go to court with them. She can help show them breathing techniques. She can help show lots of different things that she does with them to help support the clients. She helps walk through so many different options with them to make sure they understand all of their options, that they can think through them. She helps reword things for me and all of my attorneys on a regular basis in a way that a client can digest it. Sometimes she's doing that in real time. Sometimes she's doing that in revising a letter we've put together. She also is fantastic in being able to sit with us when we've sat with a client and say we've walked away frustrated, right? We're human too. And we've said, why is this client just not answering my question? Like, what? Why? Like, I've asked the same question and you're giving me a story that's 30 minutes long about something completely different. And she's able to say, this client is sitting in shame. You're just not seeing it. Oh, okay. Well, now if I can name that shame for the client and validate, then that client can sort of move out of that shame. And then we can get to the point of what we're trying to do in the case. So that's been a huge breakthrough for our clients. We've taken her to mediations with us, either in a client support role, or sometimes it feels like a client support role and a lawyer support role, to be frank, or interpreter between the two. It's fantastic. And then the other piece is chief wellness officer. So, we have a lot of what I would say, and I'm hoping to, and this is not what we've been able to do yet, but something we want to develop and work on. But we as attorneys, we sit with a lot of trauma with our clients, and we are really terrible at taking on their stuff and feeling like it's our job to fix it. In law school, that's what they teach you, right? And is, the 30 different ways to try to fix a problem. Identify the problem, issue spot it, and, how many ways can you try to fix it? And really, that is so terrible for a lawyer's mental health, which then in turn is really not great for your client. Because if you're not in a good space, you're not going to be able to do your best work for your client. And part of the trauma-informed care that we provide our clients is empowering them with agency and decision-making rather than, the stereotypical lawyer that I see and have been at times and said, client, do this, right? And so trying to get her in a role of helping us stay in our lane, helping us try to not be in what I call, after I went to a retreat and learned it's not compassion fatigue, it's empathetic distress, right? So not sitting with that client, having them tell me all the problems they have and then take it on as my own, right?
Yeah, and I think as you said, you go to school, you're taught the law, doctors taught to be a doctor. I've been taught finance. There's so much more to the role, especially in family law, that you play. And I think, as you mentioned there, I want to make sure everybody knows, like, the great thing, again, about your therapist is they can't testify.
Right.
Versus an outside therapist, which everyone is important. Therapists are important. Definitely don't avoid a therapist because of this. But an outside therapist, they can be called to testify.
They can, and it's one of the things that, like, if it happens in one of my cases, like, my team and I expect any other lawyer would do the same thing. We fight so hard to prevent it from happening because that relationship is critical and crucial. And quite frankly, I mean, the argument should be made and should always be made that, like, if you're getting help, protect it and empower it. But ultimately, it can happen. And so I need my clients to be able to have an outlet.
We'll definitely get back to you. I love all the creative stuff that you're doing. I think when you said earlier, you know, how was I doing? I didn't have grades to tell me. It makes me think of young Sara, and was, you know, being an attorney, especially a family law lawyer, always something that you knew you were going to do.
No way. No way. No. In fact, I didn't even take the class in law school. I was so anti-family law. Like,
what was it about it that either you didn't like, or there was something else that you liked more?
Both. Didn't like it, and something else I liked more. Both. So, I mean, I always knew I was going to be a lawyer. Before I could even say the word properly, apparently. My mother always said I used to walk around saying I was going to be that. So, I don't know. I guess I just had some intuition. But yeah, no, I always knew I was going to be a lawyer. It's funny, I went to my undergrad degrees in business because I was going to go to law school and do business law. I had no desire to be in court. Then I got to law school and went and did my first oral argument, and it was exhilarating. It was the most fun I'd ever had. And so I guess that tells you a lot about me. But
that's why you're perfect for this podcast. And a lot of attorneys will say, like, you were either good at, you know, trial and arguments, or, you know, or you're not.
Right.
And so you have to have that desire and that ability.
Yeah. So as soon as I did that, I was like, well, guess we're going to be in court. What are we going to do? And for me, it was my dream was to be a prosecutor. It was criminal law. It was prosecution. And, you know, the route I think a lot of lawyers or law students take is you either sort of take all the bar classes, right? So you can just, like, focus on making sure you pass the bar exam. I didn't do that. I really wasn't, not that I wasn't worried about it. I just was like, I want to get as much practical experience and try as many things as I can before I actually have to go do it for the first time in real life as a licensed attorney. And so I took every actual, like, practical internship, practical course, trial at, like, whatever I could do that was having me, like, in courtroom practicing skills. That's what I did. And so the first thing we did was, like, the legal clinic at the law school, which is almost always family law. And so that was my first experience with family law. And, you know, it seemed too emotional and heavy, and it just seemed like a lot at the time. And I just wasn't that moved by it. I was more excited by, not that criminal isn't all of those things, but I was just more excited by, like, the criminal law at the time. And I just wasn't intrigued by family. So yeah, I took everything I could. I interned with judges. I ended up having my first jury trial before I graduated in the prosecutor's office in Boston, which was really fun. And got my dream job almost right away, and then was super bored. It was like, what am I going to do?
Well, and so you to have your first trial before you even graduated, I mean, that's, I would think, pretty big.
We were really fortunate, and it was a throwaway case, right? So I mean, it was literally, I walked in one day, mostly as a third-year law student, the public defender's office, the prosecutor's office, they had interns, and we were doing, bond hearings and little things like that. But the prosecutor that day had a simple assault, and he didn't really want to try it, and neither did the public defender's office. And so they gave it to us interns and said, here you go. And we were really lucky that they did that. But they have a very active office up there. And I literally was so ridiculous. I picked like Dorchester, which is like one of the most active and more dangerous parts of town in Boston, because I was like, I want to see as much as I can.
How'd that case go?
It was fun. It was a ton of fun. They do things differently in Boston. So, I didn't get to, the judge picks the jury. We don't really get to do that part of it. But, I got to open, I got to close, I got to cross-examine, I got to do direct, and the elected prosecutor came in and watched, and I still have to this day, like, the write-up that he gave me and said, like, you have a natural talent for this, and, like, I kept it forever and was just like, see, I meant to do this.
What was the verdict?
Oh, I lost. I lost. I truly think that that's why they gave it to us. It was like it was a loser case. So, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a great experience.
And that's where they say, sometimes the losses are actually wins.
Absolutely. I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And we had no prep time. The public defender intern and I had no prep. We walked in that day. They told us we were trying it. They did not tell us ahead of time. It was crazy.
Was that good or bad? Do you think like not having any prep time?
I think it was crazy. I can't imagine doing that to an intern. Probably good. It probably like helped me be less freaked out, maybe bad in the sense that maybe I could have done an even better job. I don't know. He was there helping me, obviously, and the public defender was there helping the public defender intern. So, I don't think they particularly cared about the case that much. It was a bar fight. So
you got there, you were bored.
What? Yeah. So, first I went to the right out of law school, I got a clerkship at the Department of Justice. They had like an honors program. I did that for a year where I worked for the Federal Immigration Court. And that was a really cool experience. It was just a 1-year program, but I got to watch as many trials as possible and write decisions for judges. And of course, they reviewed them and tweaked them and all that stuff. But that was an incredible experience. And my next job after that was in the public defender's office. And so I did that. The training there was phenomenal. But the work itself was incredibly difficult. I spent most of my time in the juvenile unit. And so I burned myself out extremely quickly. It was at month 9 when I had one of my clients hurt himself, and he didn't make it. And so that was, it was just depressing. It was too much. It was very naive of me in retrospect, but I spent many, many, many hours, and I was single, didn't have a lot going on at the time, but I spent many hours sitting up at the juvenile detention center 4 or 5 nights a week, hanging out with these kids because they didn't have anybody else up there spending time with them. So I really burnt myself out very quick, thinking I was going to be like some kind of savior, which was silly, but.
And that's what the
well-intentioned.
Yeah, the naive
well-intentioned,
part was.
But naive, yes. And then around that time, I got a call from the prosecutor's office in the city and in the county at the same time, who I'd interviewed with before, and then they weren't hiring, or I didn't make the cut. I don't remember which, but they both called back at the same time, and I interviewed with both again. I got job offers from both, and I was sort of like, which do I pick? And so I ended up picking St. Louis County Prosecutor's Office, and that had been my dream job. And I got it, and I stayed there for a couple of years. But at the time, people weren't really trying very many cases. So I'd only had a couple trials and was sort of like, I want to be in court more. This is just not what I thought it was going to be.
That's the boredom part?
Yeah. I mean, had I gone to the city, it would have been very different. It would have been very different. It probably would have been like complete polar opposite. I probably would have been like so overworked. They were trying cases like crazy. But I didn't know enough to know. And my connection, like my personal connection, had been to the county. And so that's where I had, in my mind, like that's where I want to be. So, I mean, I'm still grateful for the experience. I still got to, have a murder trial and had a few other trials. And it was a great experience, but it just was not what I thought it was going to be. And so then I ended up thinking, well, what the heck are you going to do?
This was my dream job.
Yeah.
And it's not.
It's just not. And so that's when I kind of thought back through to law school and was like, okay, you tried all those different things. Like, what else did you try? What else did you like? And I remember thinking, well, you had that family law experience, and it sort of was an intersection between some criminal elements, some family law elements. You're in court a lot. You're working with people. There's a lot of advocacy there. These are things I was looking for. And so I ended up applying and getting hired at a pretty preeminent law firm, family law firm. And it was kind of off to the races from there.
So thinking about the city or the county, looking back, do you wish you had gone the other way? Do you wish you had gone with the city job?
So sometimes I do think, like, what would have happened, right? But I don't think my life would be where it is now. So I really can't say that I wish I would have done that, because I truly believe that had I changed that course, then it would have changed the course of everything else. So.
Yeah, meant to be where you end up being. So you're at this preeminent law firm, family law. How does that work, going from criminal prosecuting murder trial to now I'm going to work with families?
So it was really very different. It was a very good experience, very interesting experience. It was definitely a big reason why I run the firm the way I do versus how that firm was run. It was a very big change. The clientele there was very hard for me to relate to. I still don't charge to this day the hourly rate that lawyer charged back then. And that was in like 2007. So it was hard to relate to those clients. They didn't come in as families. They weren't treated as families. They weren't seen as families. They were seen as individual clients who were treated like, you're lucky to be here. You're lucky I took your case. It was not the place for me. There was a lot of entitled clients there who I struggled to relate to them. And I did not stay for very long.
Yeah, it's we were recording another episode talking about how sometimes in business, if there is a client, especially, you're taking on clients, but a place, client, whatever, that's not the right fit, you need to be able to say no or walk away from that.
Right. Yes. Actually, that's one of the things that's in our sort of our firm compass is we are not the right fit for every client, and every client is not the right fit for us. And I would say that was very true for me and that place and most of the clientele there, with the exception of one, who I still am very good friends with to this day. So
you got a good friendship out of that one.
Very good friendship out of that.
So you leave there, and what's next?
So I left there and I went to a different firm where I practiced criminal and family together. And I practiced criminal and family together then for several years after that. And then I ended up, I'm trying to remember what year, I don't even remember what year it was, but at some point I ended up out on my own for the first time. And that was very much again, very naive.
What made you, because I think when somebody starts their own business or goes out on their own, like that's a pretty bold, courageous move. What made you do that? What was that deciding factor?
Oh, it was not bold or courageous back then. It was just stupid. It was just, I was not, lawyers, like, they're not taught how to be leaders, and they're not taught how to be great bosses. And I'm not claiming to be one. I'm constantly working on that. It's constantly a work in progress.
Well, that's the sign of a good boss, somebody who's constantly learning and growing.
Yeah. But I didn't love the mentality of the places that I had sort of tried. And so I think it was a combination of that, just being unhappy, and then what I love to call associate math, which is this idea of, well, this is my hourly rate where I'm working, and if I just have these cases and I go do the same thing on my own, like, look how much money I'll make. Which is so silly, especially somebody who had a business degree, right? Like, and I knew I'd have some overhead. I mean, I wasn't like completely naive, but you don't appreciate the other piece to it, which is that you don't get to just hang up your shingle and all these clients are going to come. It doesn't work that way.
Was it the overhead? Was it the business development? It
wasn't the overhead. It was the business development. Yeah. And it was the insane hours I was putting in trying to do everything myself, because I didn't have the money to pay anybody to help me. I had some part-time help here and there, but it wasn't a lot. And so then at some point I thought, I just can't keep doing this. And so I ended up going back out and working for a firm again. I worked for one of the bigger family law firms in town, and I stayed there for 5 years, worked my way up, and just kind of put my nose to the grindstone and learned everything I could about running a firm. And when I say learned everything I could, I learned really great things about how to do it well, and also like what not to do, right? And then eventually I got to a point where I just was like, one day I just was like, I can't do this anymore. And so at that point I had talked to a friend of mine who was also an attorney, and she and I had met originally in the public defender's office, and she had a practice and was trying to do criminal work because that's what she knew, but she was taking on all these family cases because that's who kept knocking at her door. And she said, I don't know what to do with all this. And I said, well, I'll take the family, you take the criminal. And we were kind of off to the races. And at that point also, I had been in practice long enough that people knew who I was. I had developed a reputation. And so that finally meant something, right? The business development then was easier. And so that's the second time I went out on my own. That was in 2014. And I've been hustling ever since. And I am, like every other business owner out there, thankful every day that the phone keeps ringing and terrified every day that it won't.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of challenges to, as you said, it's not just, you think, oh, I'll hang up my shingle, put my name out there, this will work, the math will work, it'll be so easy. There's so many different hats you have to wear, and you have to hustle, and you don't know what's coming next week, next month, etc.
That's right. That's right.
What was even just the second time around, I mean, what were the biggest challenges or surprises of things that were so difficult?
So many. I mean, so many things, right? Because this time I grew a firm. Like, I grew a whole firm. It wasn't just me. And over these years, I mean, I've gotten bigger and smaller and bigger and smaller, and I've learned many things, many, many lessons, many hard lessons, many beautiful lessons. I think the most painful is to not treat my employees like family, not to think of them like family, not to say we're all family here. We're not. I need to have appropriate boundaries. with my employees, I need to think of us as a team. But it is healthier for them and healthier for me, and is more respectful for them and for me. And when I refer to boundaries, I mean me being respectful of their boundaries and my own, to think of us as teammates and not as family.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm sitting here like processing what you're saying, because as we said, there's a lot of dysfunctional families. There's a lot of people who are families, and if you could choose, you wouldn't necessarily choose that to be your family. However, a great functioning team, you know, people want to pour into that. They want to be a part of that. That's just a standard, a gold standard.
Right. Well, and I'll say there's a lot of dysfunctional teams too, right? And that's still something that I think is like the hardest thing for me to figure out. And that is still something that I haven't figured out, and I am still working very hard to do. And I do think that starts and stops with me as a leader. And again, not something we learn in school, law school anyway.
Well, and I was going to say, I mean, I don't think, you know, there's many places where they do teach that, you know, right, to be a good leader, and it changes, right? It evolves, like styles of communication, et cetera. You've got all these generations working together now. It's very, very different. One, I don't think they teach it. Two, I don't think you learn it in college and then you're done. If you did learn it, I think you're constantly having to level up.
I think that, and I think the other thing that can be like difficult too is like your team changes, your people change. You know, I mean, I can remember someone told me early on, like the people, I mean, this was very early on, like the people that you have with you now are not necessarily going to be the people that like stay with you, and the people that get you where you need to be are not going to be the people that like get you to the next phase. And I remember at the time hearing that and being like, well, that is so offensive, and it sounds like you're just using them, right? But it's true, and it's part of growth. And to think that like we're all just going to be together forever is extremely naive and unfair. And I think what's challenging is for some of the people who have been with me for such a long time, I think it also can be challenging for them to see so much change, because I have changed a lot. The firm has changed a lot, and that can feel really uncomfortable. And I think that can also then be sort of like feeling like you have to constantly be bracing yourself for what's next. But I'm not somebody who's afraid of change. For me, I'm very much like, this is not working, let's pivot, let's try something new. I'm not going to just keep doing the thing that's not working.
Change and fear and all of that, inevitable, it's out there. How are you, so many people are afraid of change. How are you just emboldened, let's do it, it's not working? Like, is it something you always were? Have you learned along the way?
I think it's something I developed in law school. In law school, when I don't know where it came from, quite frankly, because I am a person that has anxiety. But in law school, like, I think once I knew it probably developed around the time that I started like doing things in sort of a courtroom setting in law school, right? Where it was like, I'm scared, and then I did it, and then it was fun. And once I got going, it went well, right? And so I sort of just developed this mentality, and it's not 100% of the time. I would love to say that it is, but it's not. But there are times when I'm just like, okay, we're just going to do this scared. We just are. And a lot of times it turns out just fine, and sometimes it doesn't. But I am smart enough to know that when something's not going well, I'm going to pull the plug. I'm not going to just keep like doing the same thing that we're doing because we said we were going to do that and it's not going well. Like, that would be really silly. That would be really foolish.
So it should keep working.
Right.
And as you mentioned, some of the people who were there early on who can say, I remember when I was there when we first started this, and whichever, whether it's business and life, there are times we outgrow people, thoughts, ways of doing things, and maybe some of that's sad, but necessary.
It is. I mean, I think it is necessary. I think that, quite frankly, if I was still practicing the same way that I was practicing when I started, my clients would be much worse off. I think that, we have very, what I call high needs, high touch clients, and we provide a very high need, high touch service, which is why I kind of go back to, like, we're not for everyone and everyone's not for us. But somewhere along the way, lawyers started referring people to us where, I don't know that they would phrase it this way, but I would say maybe they felt like the client was too much. And for me, I was like, no, I welcome that. You're not too much. Like, we can help you. We can hold your hand along the way. Years ago, before we were doing any trauma-informed work, I think it was always kind of in there somewhere, right? I had a lawyer say to me, like, you're just so hand-holdy with clients. Like, you just hold their hands so much. And I was like, you mean provide support? Is that what you mean? And she was like, yeah. Like, you just provide so much extra. Like, I'm just not here for, like, being their therapist and their friend and their this and their that. And I said, I don't know that I'm being their therapist or their friend, but I am providing a lot of practical advice. And I am trying to get them what I would now call into a window of tolerance so that they can make a good decision, right? When people are constantly dysregulated, they can't make good decisions. And so it's just sort of, like, I look back now and I can see, like, this was always coming.
Well, and you think, okay, if I'm going to an attorney, that's what I want. They're going to give me practical advice, right? So knowing that we've had these conversations before, I know there's yes and to that, but sharing to those who may be listening, what's some of that, like, real practical advice?
Yeah, I think there are some attorneys who are great at giving practical advice, and some who are just like, I'm staying in my lane, I'm giving you legal advice, and that's it, the end, right? So I had a client not too long ago who I was working on her motion to modify. She'd done her divorce with another lawyer in town, who I think is an excellent attorney and stayed in the lawyer lane, right? When she and I were wrapping up her motion to modify, and she was kind of venting to me, I don't even know how it happened. We were chatting one day, and she just was like, every time the kids come back, they're so dysregulated, and it's just a mess. And I tried to talk to my ex-husband about it, and he just claims that they're fine at his house. And I said, let's talk about that for a minute. I said, I know you're just kind of venting to me but can I just inquire for a minute, and can we talk about it? And so we start talking about it, and I said, so here's a couple things that I'm thinking about, and maybe you could potentially talk about getting kids in with a therapist. But, sometimes kids are more dysregulated with the parent that they feel more safe to express emotions with. And she said, oh my God, what? And I said, well, I don't know what he's like. You know him better than I do. But if they feel like at your house, it's okay to sort of express whatever they're feeling, right? Maybe they're sort of, and she's like, no, stop. We all had to walk on eggshells around him all the time. It's half the reason I divorced him. That's exactly what's going on. And I said, yeah, so he's not seeing it. He's not lying to you. He's not seeing it. And so, unfortunately for you, you are going to have to hold space for this for the kids. Fortunately for your kids, they have someone in their life. They just need one person that they can have that emotional safety with. But here's what I'll tell you. As I said, it's always going to be worse on transition days. She's like, what? And I'm like, the days they come back from his house, it's always going to be worse. It's always going to be harder on those days. So, like, what you need to do on those days is, like, whatever rules you have in place, they don't exist that day. like lighten them as much as possible. Okay. Like to the bare minimum of like, we just don't hit, like just make it like basic safety and that's it. Right. So like if their shoes have to go in some certain spot not that day, they don't, right. Like lighten the load that day. If there's a certain snack they like after school, a certain meal that they really love, that's the thing you serve on those days. Whatever comfort items you can provide for them, if there's a movie you guys love watching together, if there's a TV show you love, whatever thing you love, that's the thing you do that day. That day is all about like co-regulation, the quiet without being said comfort things, and lax boundaries around like the rules of the house. You've got to make it easier for them on those days. And she was like, no one has ever said this before. This would have been so much more helpful to have known before. I never thought about it like that, that kind of thing.
Well, I remember you sharing at some point, sometimes the misnomer with a divorce and kids is, I just have to deal with this until they're 18.
Yep.
I just have to get to their 18th birthday.
Yep.
And a lot of what you said around that was very educational and eye-opening for me that I would not have thought of.
Yeah, so I have many clients who, when they're like in the throes, sometimes it's at the beginning, sometimes it's in the throes of frustration, that will say, I just have to get to 18. And I'm like, well, can we talk about that for a second? Because quite frankly, like at some point, you probably want to be around for grandkids, right? And they'll say, well, yeah. And I'm like, do you want to have do you think your kids are going to have his and her grandparent visitation date? Like, it's not going to work that way. At some point, your kids are going to make it about themselves and their family, right? And wouldn't it be nice if you got invited to that? Oh, yeah. And wouldn't it be nice if their father could be there too, or their mother could be there too, and you all could cooperate and get along? Because I can tell you right now, the first people they're going to cut out is the two of you, or the one, like whichever one of you makes it harder, right? So it's not to 18, it's forever. It's forever. And the other thing I try to talk about with clients is, and a lot of us don't think of it like this, but like the relationship that you develop with your children while they're little is going to be setting the groundwork and the framework for the relationship you have with them while they're adults. At some point when they become an adult, they will choose whether you stay in their life or not. It is their choice. And so I just think it's important no matter what, married or unmarried, but it's especially important like during separation and divorce, right? Because that's when it's likely for you to become the most toxic. There's an invitation for toxicity there, right? And it's so hard. It's so hard. Like, I feel like we ask so much of parents during that time. It almost feels unfair and impossible.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the kid has a bad day. I mean, we know what we're like if we have a bad day at work or a bad incident or somebody is awful in traffic and we're dysregulated. Again, haven't gone through it, thankfully. I can only imagine, somebody that you've said, we're going to spend the rest of our lives together. We're going to share our most intimate everything. And then it falls apart, breaks apart for some reason.
Right.
How do we just be a normal person through all that?
Yeah, you can't. And then, of course, it's also like, unless it's your second divorce, it's also like the first time going through this, right? So there's no guidebook unless you have someone that's really guiding you in the right direction, right? And helping you along the way and giving you good resources. We do that. We give really good resources. There's other lawyers who give really good resources. If you're in a situation where it's impossible we like to talk about being able to continue to be a family even after divorce, right? In theory, that's like the best idea, right? But it's not always possible. I will tell you, my firm is also known for having very, very high conflict cases. I think it's because of my background and my law partner's background in doing criminal defense work and work as prosecutors, I mean, we get a lot of the really nasty cases. And in those cases, it's just not possible. And so a lot of times then we're shifting into helping our clients with other resources on how to communicate with, a toxic ex and not get sucked in, how to help your child survive their childhood at the other person's house, right? Because the key thing I try to help my clients understand is you can't parent the other parent. You will make yourself crazy.
Yeah, we talked about that last time, and I thought that was interesting. I mean, you, barring safety and things, at some point it wouldn't be how you would do it. You have to let go. You have to let that parent do it as they do. Right.
And you have to know, like the research shows, kids need one person. They need one. And you can be that one person.
Now imagine if you're trying to parent the other parent, if there's that friction there, if there's that constant back and forth, then your kids are still living through all that, and they then have no one because all they see is both fighting back and forth.
I think that, and if you're constantly weighed down in your own stress and psyche of having to try to parent that other parent, then you're not able to be that one person for your child because you're not in your own window of tolerance. You're not regulated, right? I mean, ideally, it's never going to be perfect, but ideally the hope is that you can be as regulated as possible when you're with your child.
Is there, we talk about high conflict, we talk about trauma-informed law. Is there without specificity, any case that, or something that stands out as this is a Marler Law case?
Several. Which example do you want? I mean, I've got high conflict. I've got trauma informed. I mean, we had a case recently. I would say like a really great example of a trauma informed case recently was a case where my client was settling and I didn't want her to. I wanted her to go to trial, but it's not my choice. And years ago, as a non-trauma informed attorney, as a younger attorney, I probably would have pushed her. And that would have been the wrong thing to do, even though I still worry she will come back later and say, why did you let me do this? But I had Brittany sit with us and go through every possible scenario of, are you sure? Ad nauseum. So that my client could make that decision for herself. It is her decision. It is not mine. And it is her choice. It is her family. It is not mine. And so ultimately I have to feel good about it because I know we went through every possible scenario, and not just from a legal perspective, but from an emotional perspective. Because lots of clients are coming from an emotional perspective, and lots of lawyers don't want the emotions in the room, and we welcome them.
You can't separate the emotions. You can't.
No, you can't. You can't. I mean, the high conflict cases, I would say, the ideal situation in those is we show up at hospitals sometimes with our clients if we need to, in order to advocate to make sure that evidence is being collected appropriately. I've done that several times, and I've forced Ramona to do it once. And she's thankful that I did. So we do handhold. We go above and beyond. We show up for our people. We provide a high level of service. We're very upfront with our clients about that, and which is why I say we're not for everybody. Not everybody is for us. But in those high conflict cases, like showing up at those times, it made all the difference. Both those cases, which is not really a norm in family law, there's not usually a winner, right? But in both those cases, recent cases, we won those, outright won them. And I believe showing up at the hospital in both those cases made all the difference.
How does it make the difference? Because you're getting the evidence? Because you're like, what would have been missed?
In one of them, we made sure the evidence was collected by someone else. And I don't think it would have been collected or wouldn't have been collected properly. In the other one, it meant early intervention between me and a children's division worker and setting the tone that I was not messing around. I was serious about what was going on. And I think it made a difference to the judge when I had filed a temporary restraining order and was setting the tone for how serious this case was.
I sit here and I think life can be hard and heavy and challenging anyway. And to do what you do, to experience and see and feel all the things that you're going through. How do you and how does your team calibrate, reset, get help?
Yeah, so that's the piece we're still working on. So, I mean, right now, we have Brittany as our chief wellness officer. So she's there for people to chat with in the office. She does our trauma trainings. She also does things like breathing with Brittany, and she teaches us how to breathe, which sounds silly, but it's not. Because I can't tell you, I mean, I've done so much of it myself, and then I've done a lot of extensive and extra training myself that, like, it's easy for me to see, and I can do it with my employees, I can do it with my clients. I mean, I can look at someone and say, like, you're holding your breath, right? And so Brittany's great at that. She can see that with us. She can tell us that. She can recognize it. She leads meditations in the office. I would say that's surface right now. The intention is to go further. I will tell you, some of what she does is just makes observations for things that I'm like, okay, let's put that on the list of things we need to work on, right? And one of the first things she observed was, why don't you guys eat lunch? Like, other than staff, why are none of the lawyers eating lunch? Or why are you working through lunch? Like, why is no one taking a lunch break? And I was like, what are you talking about? Who takes a lunch break? So some of it is stuff that she's just recognizing and telling us about. Some of it is we are trying to implement. She has recently helped us bring on, and we're getting ready to start working with an organizational psychologist to help us with our culture, our company culture. So there's still a lot of work in that piece of it, to be frank. And the biggest piece that I'm wanting to work on, and the training that she and I are working on developing right now, is, and we had one talk about this like a long time ago, but we've got to do more with it, is this concept of, you know, there's no such thing as compassion fatigue. It is empathetic distress. And we have got to, as attorneys, as paralegals, as legal assistants, as law clerks, as firm administrators, like, no matter who you are in the firm, everybody knows about the cases. Everybody hears about it. Everybody cares. And we have got to be able to care and set it down. Because we don't do our clients any good if we care so much that we're not sleeping at night, that we're not taking breaks. And I'll be the first to admit, like, I'm terrible at practicing what I preach, because it's a lot. As you mentioned, all the hats you wear as the owner and the lawyer and the marketing director and the IT person, you know, I mean, all the things. But for my people, I can at least try to establish a practice for them to set it down. You are not here to be the savior.
Well, I know we've talked before about the setting of your office and the environment of your office. Very, as you kind of said, like, other attorneys, like, what are they doing? They do so much hand-holding. They're, you know, and I'm putting some words in here, but they're weird. They're different. And look at the setting of their office, and they've got aroma and therapy, and they've got, you know, a certain design that's so I'm not saying this, but I could imagine people, oh my gosh, it's so like frou-frou girly thing to do. Like, what's that about?
Yeah. Yeah, no, we're very, very intentional with our trauma-informed practice. And it starts with psychological safety. And that's not just for clients, it's for us too. So we have intentionally sort of tried to appeal to all of the senses in the office. So we have picked very neutral and I would say soft colors. We have a scent going that is sort of a nice and calming scent. We have snacks everywhere for people. We have fidgets everywhere for people. We have drinks, right? But like part of it is just being able to recognize like this client's crying. Let me get cold water. Cold water will help reset their nervous system without them even realizing it. We have chairs of every size. That's important. Some people like want to feel tight in a seat and comforted that way. Some people want to feel like they have a ton of space in their seat and need to fidget around. We have blankets available. It's about sort of being able to, we have a kind of a white noise machine going. It's the idea that when they come in, it doesn't look or feel like a lawyer's office. They sit down and it can sort of be like this without even necessarily realizing they're doing it. Right?
Yeah, that release of whatever front or reason you've had to keep the shoulders tight and up and all of that, you can relax and release. And to me, as I'm hearing you say, it's like it's lawyering for the whole person, not just the case.
That's
at
right.
hand.
That's right. Like we always say, it's important for clients, like you don't know what they've been through, but you need to be aware of the fact that you don't know what they've been through. So for example, like a rule in our office is when you seat them, you never seat them with their back to the door. Ever. They should always be able to see the door. Again, psychological safety. So just things like that we're trying to do.
It's pretty amazing because I feel like all that is so new anyway in life, let alone to layer nervous system, psychological safety, physical safety, all that into law practice just sounds so groundbreaking, new, amazing.
A lot of it's just bringing two worlds together, right? And then a lot of it I also get and is endorsed by a lot of the national trainings that I attend. We truly believe that the gold standard in family law, and quite frankly, I believe the gold standard in practicing law is to bring sort of these two elements together. I don't think it's limited to family law. I think it's necessary in doing personal injury work. I think it's necessary in doing, employment discrimination work. I mean, any work where you've got people who have suffered some type of trauma, some type of victimization, and lawyers who are trying to help them, right? They both need it, the lawyers and the clients.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned speaking about it, because some newer things that you've been doing is actually going and speaking to other law firms, speaking to universities, other places about this. What is this trauma-informed lawyering?
Yes. We were really, really fortunate and excited to have Simon Law Firm ask us to come speak to them about trauma-informed lawyering. And it was awesome. They were super receptive to the idea. And, I would say, they are some of the best personal injury attorneys in town. And they are working on some of the hardest cases. When my law partner, Ramona, was doing defense work, was doing personal injury defense work for a while, she did that for a few years. I will tell you, I thought family law was hard. Those catastrophic injury cases, oh my gosh, I mean, there were times when I was like, I need you to stop talking. I don't know how much more of this I can listen to. So I would say those attorneys and those clients need it just as much as our family law attorneys do.
That makes sense. I think initially, personal injury, somebody fell on a crack in the sidewalk, big deal, but it can be much, much bigger than that.
It's so much bigger than that. I mean, the kinds of cases that I was hearing about, I mean, we're talking about spinal cord injuries. We're talking about, people who've been burned, people who are deceased. And I mean, it is really catastrophic injury. And, for the lawyers to have to review those pictures, for the lawyers to have to deal with those cases, for the families who have to go through this, you think about the parents who have had, children with injuries during birth. I mean, these are life-altering, lifelong, traumatic things. Those lawyers, those clients, they need this.
Yeah, that makes sense when you think about it, put it that way. And then working with the university and where could this go?
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, the law schools have it figured out. I mean, this wasn't offered when I was in school. I wish it would have been, but, SLU and WashU, they both have programs for being able to get your JD and your MSW at the same time.
What's the MSW?
Master's in Social Work, which is just brilliant. And so for us to be able to, we were invited to go talk to WashU about this, to their program, their JD and MSW students. And so I'm hoping that will turn into some type of a partnership with their students. I think it would be brilliant to be able to work together and talk to them about it more. But it also it makes sense. I mean, there is such a social work aspect to what we do. I mean, it sort of ties me back to that very first job I had, the real lawyering job I had outside of the Department of Justice, where I was in the public defender's office. And the on-staff psychologist at the juvenile detention center would say to me, whenever he would see me there late at night, you're just a glorified social worker, right? I don't know why you call yourself a lawyer. And he's just giving me trouble. But the degrees together make sense, because so much of what we do, you do need the skill set to have to combine the two. And it's hard to wear both hats at the same time. As much training as I've done, it's very hard to wear both hats at the same time. And so it is so much easier when Brittany and I are, working together as a team with a client, and I can stay in my lawyer lane and she can hold space for the emotions and recognize, and I'm not having to try to give legal advice and read the client's, body language and, and do all the things, right? And if Brittany's not available, then, if I can fill that role while one of my other lawyers is staying in the legal lane, right? But it is hard to wear two hats at the same time.
What do you think, the SLU, the WashU, the Simon Law, what do you think they're most intrigued by or most drawn to?
I think Simon, what seemed like their interest, well, quite frankly, it seemed like their interest was dual. It seemed like helping their attorneys, but also helping their clients. I mean, they seemed really intrigued in trying to help their clients. I mean, I think they see what their clients are going through. Obviously, they're walking with them, but they are also, as attorneys, I imagine, going through a vicarious trauma as well. I mean, I've had a couple of cases like that in my firm, back when we did PI, and they were incredibly traumatic to walk with these families through these things, especially in cases where there was death or permanent life-altering injuries. But what I think they're looking for is a better way to practice, a better way to do this. I hope that's what they're looking for. That's what I think they're looking for. I think that's what intrigued them. There is a future, I think people are much more, since COVID, people are much more open-minded to to therapy, to helping themselves, to learning more about how like our minds work and like the kind of things that we need. I can't speak to the personal injury world as much. I'm not in that world, but I can speak to the family law world, and I can tell you that like the litigants are fed up. The lawyers are fed up. The judges are fed up. We need something different. We need a different approach. And we're all sort of stuck to some degree in the confines of the law when we go to court, right? But I think if I could get more lawyers on board with taking a different approach with their clients, we could turn some of the temperature down, right? I mean, that we have a sign in our office that I had made that said, am I intensifying the litigation, right? Essentially the idea is like, am I making this worse? Because that's not your goal. It shouldn't be your goal. Now, some cases they are what they are. Some people have to have their day in court, right? Some people have to have a trial. And if that's what they need, that's what we give them. But that's not what everybody needs or wants. And, at our firm, like what I love is that you have lawyers who can give you either. But ultimately, like being able to walk alongside them in a different way, I do think can help bring some civility back, and try to sort of, just bring a different approach. I mean, I practice collaborative law too. I think I've told you about that before. And certainly that doesn't mean that it's easy. It's actually very difficult. But it is a much more dignified approach to divorce.
And that collaborative law, for people who don't know, explain that.
So it's divorce or modification, if you will. You could really approach either. But you hire an attorney who's been trained in collaborative law. You both have lawyers. You have a mental health professional who's your coach. And then you have a financial person on board too, a financial neutral. And we sit around a table together and we work through your process outside of court. And I always say creativity dies in the courtroom. And I love creativity in cases. And I love people having the ability to have the power to decide what their parenting plan looks like, what their settlement's going to look like, right? Judges don't get that much say. Like they kind of have boxes they have to stay within. And so when we go through a collaborative process, your emotions are welcome in the room. We have a psychologist or a therapist that's present to be able to help you walk through those. We have a child specialist who's present, who's also a therapist that can handle everything going on with your kids, give them a voice in the room. And then we have a financial expert there who can walk through, no matter how complex your financials are, all of the complexities of it, business valuations, whatever we've got to do. And we can get as creative as possible to go through your divorce process. Like I said, it's all done outside the courtroom. It's all done in private, which is really nice. And then nothing is filed until it's all settled. And again, we can be as creative as we want to be. And it is just a much more dignified way to end your marriage, but keep your family intact.
Yeah, more civility, more dignity in the world, realizing we're all humans trying to move through this and figure it out together. Well, I was going to say, I don't know about anybody out there, but you would sure be a great place to work. Hopefully I never need your services.
I hope not.
I got the video guy back there. We're in it together. But for those that, I mean, it is definitely, there's so much to offer. There's so much to receive through your firm, Marler Law Partners, and everything that you continue to add and be on the forefront of that creativity and really helping the whole person, not just the case. The types of people that come to you that you work with, ideal clients, et cetera, what would that be? Who would that be?
I get asked that question a lot, and I think the best answer I have is somebody who has somewhat of an open mind, right? Somebody who is open to wanting to learn, wanting to do things a little differently, and is willing to participate in the process, right? So it's challenging when I have someone who wants me to just tell them what to do. I'm not going to do that, right? And I have a lot of clients who say, just tell me what to do. I do. And what's really cool is when I have clients who start off like that, and we help very, very, very slowly, with very little tiny baby steps, help them start to make small decisions, and to watch them blossom into making decisions for themselves is phenomenal. But you've got to be able to have a little bit of an open mind, right? You can't be completely afraid of therapy, right? Or growth. You can't be completely afraid of being pushed a little bit or out of your comfort zone, because we're going to do that. We can't really leave you better than we found you if you're not open to that. And I would say typically people who have a need for high touch, who want to be able to have a lot of contact. Now, we offer certain things to try to help also minimize fees for that, right? So, we started years ago a connected client program where we sort of schedule calls that I mirrored sort of after talking to your therapist. I think I told you about that last time. So, there's a lot of anxiety around, when am I going to talk to my lawyer next? So we just kind of nip that in the bud by scheduling calls. And so we put you on a call schedule. It's either once a week, twice a month, or once a month, based on the complexity of your case. And, if you don't need the call, you don't need the call. And if you need it, then you get it. And you don't have this anxiety around playing phone tag with your attorney who might be in court, or, depots, or meeting after meeting after meeting with other people. On Thursdays at 9, I talk to my lawyer. So that relieves anxiety. It also helps reduce their bill, because a lot of times I tell my clients, email me ahead of time with your questions so I can try to have answers for you when we talk, rather than just talking about what your questions are and then I don't have an answer. So we do things like that to try to help with those higher need or higher anxiety people.
And you have a lot of content on social media. I love the posts that you put out there. Not only is it, I think, great in family law, but I think a lot of really good mental health, learning, growth, leadership, communication. Just if you're somebody who is open to learning and growing, following you on social media, you're going to be putting probably more videos and things out there, but yep. You're findable. People can find you on LinkedIn, Facebook, social media, obviously the Marler Law Partners website.
Yes. We're on all the social platforms, either under Marler Law Partners or Trauma Informed Lawyer. But yeah, I have been nervous about doing social media, but I finally bit the bullet and I'm doing it. So we're having fun. I keep thinking I'm doing weird things with my face, but we'll get over it. We'll get there. It's so funny. I get paid to talk for a living. Put me in court, I'll talk all day, right? Put me in front of a jury, I'll talk all day. Put a camera in front of my face and all of a sudden I get awkward, but we'll get comfortable with it and we're having fun. And the lawyers, we've been doing some fun content too. So we have some fun, little cutesy stuff coming out too, to just keep it light, entertaining.
Well, I don't think you're alone in the whole put a camera in front of somebody. I know I can get that even though I'm here all the time.
Right.
For those, again, as you search Sara Marler, SaraMarler.
You got it.
Well, I'm excited to see where this continues to go with helping universities, helping other law firms, what other creative idea you bring to the table, not only for you, your people who work with you, your clients, and everyone else out there. I think as we focus on growing and learning and helping and kindness, that the world just needs more of that.
We do. We really do. And I hope that we can just have a positive impact on the generation that, is going to be affected by the divorces that we are handling. And that we can leave the clients that we have direct impact with better than we found them. So that's kind of the goal.
That's a great way to end this. Not only your clients and everyone else, hopefully in life we can leave someone better than when we first found them. So thank you for coming back. Again,
for
another
having
great
me.
episode.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Sarah.
Thank you so much.
This concludes another episode of the She Lift Project podcast. To hear more episodes of the show, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And to learn more about our mission of helping women reach higher levels of success, visit sheliftproject.com and sign up to receive the latest news, ebooks, videos, and more.